of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be ever mindful of thee, O Lord, my strength and my salvation. Amen. Well, I hope you're surviving well the lockdown. I know I'm getting a little batty, stuck at home. I try to sneak out, and I go and I really think of all sorts of silly excuses to go to the grocery store, and it's actually a pleasure and a joy to pick up groceries and go to the pharmacy for some of our shut-ins, because I'm just... oh, there's only so many ways to rearrange our closet. Well, actually, it's not that I've got time on my hands. I have been spending hours each day trying to learn technology. If you come into the chapel, you'll see lights and camera and sound equipment, and I've got microphones, and I have been purchased editing software so that I can make these videos and live streams. I'm working later today on the first adult education class filmed to be sort of played on demand. And it all takes a learning curve, because I never learned any of this stuff 25 years ago in seminary. I did study the Bible. And friends, every time one of the things I learned about the Bible is every time I come back to it, it opens a new chapter, a new door. It's one of those, in fact, it's probably the only thing I've ever experienced in my life, that every time I come and take a second look, it gets deeper and stronger and more powerful. Now, the story of Doubting Thomas is a perfect example of that. I've known this story all my life, my church life, learned it in Sunday school, heard it read to me, read it myself many times out in church. But you know, each time I go back, I pick up something fascinating. And I'm just going to touch over this and just point out some of the things that just hit me today. On the evening of the day, that the first day of the week, the doors being shut, the Jews had scared the life out of the disciples. Jesus is dead. He's been executed. Maybe they're next. Peter ran away. The disciples fled. And they're hiding from the police. And through the door, the locked door, comes the risen Christ. Man, this is not normal. But this is the same guy where the law of gravity didn't apply when he walked on water. The laws of material physics don't apply because he's not some ghost that hovered in through the window, but he's a physical, resurrected, glorified body. This is what Mary Magdalene saw at the tomb. This is what she told the disciples about. Now, John and Peter, when they run to the tomb, after Mary told them, they just saw the wrappings on the side and the tomb empty, and they understood what had happened. See, this was different from Lazarus coming out of the tomb. When Lazarus was resurrected, they had to be helped out of the grave clothes. Undress him, Jesus tells them, because he's got all this stuff on him. But here, in Christ's case, it's all lying on the ground. His body's gone. If you remember what we read last Sunday, Mary Magdalene, when she came back the second time after telling the disciples, she saw the angels, one at either side of where the body had been, one at the foot, one in the head. And she came out and she saw a man. And she thought this man was the gardener. And she said, "What have you done with the body?" And then the gardener said, "Mary." And this was Jesus, his voice. See, Mary saw Jesus, knew Jesus, knew what he looked like. He wasn't a different person, but Jesus was dead. It couldn't be Jesus, but it was only when he spoke that she understood. Now this resurrected Christ, this glorified Christ in a physical body, with holes in his hands and the mark in his side, has come into the disciples' chamber where they're hiding. And he breathes upon, he says to them, here's a fascinating thing. He breathed on them and he said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit." Breathed upon them. That's only happened one other time in the Bible. In Genesis, when God breathed on Adam and created life. Here, Jesus breathes upon the disciples and imparts upon them life in the Spirit. And that Spirit is now passed through the disciples, not because of the disciples, it's not their spirit, but they transmit that Spirit to all who believe. The Spirit of God has come into them. Now 8 days later, and Thomas comes back, he says, and they say, guess what you missed? He says, I don't believe it. And he goes on to say, unless I see this body walking about with holes in his hands and his mark in his side, I'm not going to believe. And 8 days later, the gospel says, his disciples were again in the house, and Thomas was with them. The doors were shut. Once again, Jesus appears through the doors, physically through the doors, and he shows himself to the disciples, and he says to Thomas, look at my hands, look at my side. And Thomas falls to his feet and says, my Lord and my God. And Jesus turns to Thomas and said, but Thomas, you're a lucky guy. You've had your curiosity. You've been satisfied that I'm alive. Blessed are those who have not seen me, but who nonetheless believe. And the chapter is concluded, and John writes from an author's note, and I'm telling you this stuff, folks, so that you may believe too. Jesus did so much more that I've not written about. But no, these stories are not just stories to educate you, to teach you moral doctrine. It's true that he is God. One thing that hit me was what Thomas said, my Lord and my God. I was doing a little studying to prepare for the sermon, and I came across a Greek theologian. I really must have been bored, I guess. A Greek theologian who has a take that was never occurred to me before. His name is Theophylactus, and he was a Greek Bible scholar in the 8th century and a bishop. And he wrote about this, verse 28, which is, Thomas answered and said to him, my Lord and my God. Theophylactus writes, he who had first disbelieved after he touched his side showed himself to be an excellent theologian, for he set forth the twofold nature and the oneness of the person of Christ. For in saying, my Lord, he confessed to the human nature. Saying, my God, he confessed the divine, and that the one and the same being were both God and Lord. In Jesus Christ, we have one person with two natures, fully human and fully divine. That's something we repeat in the creeds every Sunday, and on occasions the Athanasian Creed and other creeds that we recite from the Church's history, which are statements of our belief. And frankly, it's almost rote. One Christ, but we don't really, many of us, and I include myself in this, don't sometimes get our head round this. What does it mean? What does it mean when Thomas says, my Lord and my God? How can Jesus be both man and God? Now, that was one of the things that the early church had to wrestle with. They had this biblical witness, this and other places where the Bible sets out Jesus' fully human nature. He thirsted, he suffered, he was sleepy, he was afraid. He was fully human in all those things. And then we have all these statements that he is very God of very God. He was begotten, not created. We have all these testimonies to his being God and all these testimonies to being human. Well, the church, different groups throughout history have tried to, if you will, square the circle. Some groups have said, he never really was quite human. He was always God, And he would sort of be, I don't know, what's the phrase, an android. He was a machine with the outside skin of a man, but he was really God all the time. He was fooling us. He was faking it. And when he was on the cross, he really didn't suffer. Yes, he suffered in sort of an abstract spiritual way, but he didn't really have pain. He didn't really have brokenness because he was God. And he's not like you or me. Well, friends, the scriptures tell us again and again, Jesus is human in every way. He's just like us, except he did not sin. And so to say that Jesus is a God pretending to be human denies what the Bible says. Then we go to the other extreme. Jesus was a human, and we just turned him into a God. He was a wise counselor, a good teacher, a guru, who over the course of history, poor, ignorant, savage peasants have turned into a God to assuage their psychological needs. We hear this sort of thing all the time from these smart, educated people. But it also denies the truth that we have here of who God is. He's not a man pretending to be a God, nor do we have any of these other things, that he was a man until the Holy Spirit came down from him like a dove when John the Baptist baptized him, and at that point he became God. Somehow he was adopted by God as his son. After having been a human, he sort of transmogrified. And then there's some people who say, you know, he's a little bit this, he's a little bit that. He's sort of a mixture. Well, God is not like that, the scriptures tell us. He is fully human, he is fully divine, and it took until 451 for the church to settle what Jesus was, to sort of drive away all the false and broken teachings. And the things that the Council of Chalcedon, and we say the Chalcedonian Creed from time to time, is that Jesus has two natures. He is God and man. And each nature is full and complete. He is fully God and fully man. And each nature remains distinct. But even though they're distinct, they're two natures, there's only one person. And the things that are true of one nature are nonetheless, but true of only one nature, are nonetheless true of the person of Christ. If you should ever have the good fortune to be able to travel and go to the Holy Land, one of the little side trips that you can get from the tourist companies is going down to Sinai, to St. Catherine's Monastery. And then that was built in the 5th century, and it's been in operation ever since. And it was built on the site, the tradition says, where Moses received the 10 Commandments. And in this monastery, they have the oldest icon still around, Christ Pantocrator, Christ the King, Christ the God. And if you look at the thing, and as I've seen it in pictures, I've never been there, one day I hope to go, the first thing that strikes you is the art's not that good, because, you know, the eyes don't match. And one side, his beard's a little bushier, and the other side, it's thinner, and he's sort of thin and youthful on this side, and he's rugged on this side. And he's holding a book here. On the other hand, he has and his hand is sort of strong. And on the other, he has sort of a thinner, more, I don't want to say feminine, but more youthful hand. It's just like the guy didn't do a good job. Well, if you take a mirror and sort of shine it on one half, and you see who Jesus, you see a youthful, human, loving Jesus. And if you put the mirror on the other side, you see a powerful, strong, manly God. And what the Orthodox Church has taught is that this picture teaches us about the two natures of Christ. One person, two natures. One being, but in him, it's fully human, fully divine. Now, the church went on to have other creeds and other fights, and we have the Athanasian Creed, which was written about 100 years later, where we try to really define what was going on. Now, for many of us, this is so fascinating from a historical sort of public television perspective. Why does it matter? Well, it matters in your personal relationship with God. In Jesus Christ, we have somebody who's fully human. He has experienced the pain. He has suffered as you have suffered. He has experienced loss and disappointment, hunger and betrayal. He knows what it's like. When I was a brand new priest, I think I was pretty crappy, I guess, is the best way I would describe it. I was enthusiastic. I was very smart, well-trained, but I had no real experience of life. So I could tell you all about how to raise your children, how to fix your marriage, and so on and so forth. But because I had a book, and I go through the book. Okay, here's the problem. Here's the solution. Here's what you're doing. That's a sin. Cut it out. Well, things still remain sins, but 25 years of ministry has given me a degree of understanding and empathy, where I don't lead, and I haven't led for many, many years with rules, but with love. I try to understand where a person is coming from, and through my own human experiences, understand what is motivating them, what's driving them. I've never had a problem with alcohol or gambling, but yet things in my own life give me an understanding of addiction, of the need to have a sense of peace from something external. I've been there. I've been betrayed. I've been hurt. I've experienced loss, and I've had pain. Jesus, being fully human, suffered too. And because he suffered, it's so easy to love him like a man. But can a man save you? Can good thoughts save you? Can wise thinking save you? If Jesus were just another Deepak Chopra or Tony Robbins you see on public television with all the wisdom of the world, and you follow these steps and do these things, you'll be happy, healthy, and whole every day, and in every way I'm getting better and better. Well, friends, that doesn't do much about my past and my sin, where I've been, what I've done. If I have to rely on myself or a man, I'm going to hell. I am. And it's not because I'm a Hitler or anything, but because I have so fallen short again and again and again of what God requires of me, that I will be not saved. But because God gave his Son, Jesus Christ, to suffer the penalty for my sin, I am free. Free of my past, free of my brokenness, free of who I was and where I was and what I did. I need no shame, because Christ has taken upon himself all that I've been and done. And only God can do that. I have the assurance from God that life can be eternal with him. Now, what do I mean by that? I've told many a time the story. I don't think I'll go there. I've said it too many times. I'm sorry. I'll try to keep it brief. Lord, thank you for your gift of your Son, Jesus, fully God, fully man. Thank you for condescending to take upon us himself our human flesh, our human weakness, our human brokenness, and in doing so, engage us here, not just here, not just in thinking, but in our heart, in our lives, in our experience. Friends, the two natures of Christ are what shows and guarantees for us his power to save us. And that is why it is so very important. These creeds, these rules, these studies, they're not just old-fashioned things done by faraway men in faraway times with very long beards. They apply to who we are today. And in a little way, I hope I've explained to you the importance of the two natures of Christ. Amen.